Good evening. I'm Subbarao Myla. I'm a cardiologist at Hoag Hospital. I run their cardiac cath laboratories. Every day I see patients coming in with chest pain, heart attacks, and find their blockages. And then I say to myself, why can't I eat healthy? And then comes to the term, what is a healthy diet and healthy living? We all went through a pandemic. It changed our lives, livelihoods, culture, and habits. And talking about habits, now we've got DoorDash, we've got Ubereats, Postmates, something I just learned that. I thought it's post office. So all these deliveries will give you access to an unlimited array of foods and food groups. And then how do you sort it out? Mostly comfort food. There is a fair amount of healthy food. So what is healthy food in the context of living longer, healthy, a healthy mind, brain, and heart, so to speak? Diet controls many of these, even historically, when we go as far back as we can think of written, documented evidence. There are plenty of diets, right? For example, a man's desires to control an individual is through their stomach. What's one man's food is another man's poison. So we're already admitting significant variation in what is good food, what is bad food. Way back when Plato and later Aristotle, his student, copied, and then Galen, the big philosopher, Plato said the mind and the soul, he combined them together. And then you have the heart and the brain. They all believed it's the heart that controlled, but in reality it is the stomach. Now we know from the science there are two competing hormones. One is a hunger hormone and the other one is a satiety hormone. They both regulate an array of psychological, physical desires to how much and what we eat day in and out. So there are two important terms I want to introduce. There is the homeostatic eating. That is, homeostasis is a perfect balance in the body between the amount of calories that are consumed as opposed to the amount of calories that are coming in. Think of it as a balance sheet, and homeostatic is what is the bare minimum necessary for the human body, the factory, to survive and continue, not necessarily thrive. That is the minimum metabolic requirement. That is not a lot. We're talking about 500 to 600 calories per day. But then as our activity increases, our metabolism increases, we need to consume more. Then the second term I want to tell you is the hedonistic, the desire, the love, and that's what people say. Are you living to eat? Are you eating to live? These are the two controlling factors. It's not that we don't know what's a good food where I can maintain my ideal body weight, my fitness, activity, mental alertness, muscle strength, what have you. Different goals for different individuals. What is not clear is, how do I achieve that? We all started in an ideal body weight, although the birth weight has gone up in the past 2 decades. It is very common for a baby to be 9 to 10 pounds now, compared to when I was born many years ago, and I won't tell you when, it was 4 to 5 pounds. And now in that standard, it's considered an undernourished child. There is a strong genetic component. Bigger parents will produce bigger babies. It's given. It's almost like the number of fat cells in each and every individual is fixed. So when we go on a diet, they shrink in size, but not the number. Someone asked me, what if I have a liposuction? Does that mean it increases it reduces the number of fat cells? No, it doesn't. That is the unfortunate, sad part. So mental control is the thing. Why we cannot control what we should be eating as opposed to what we want to eat. So fundamentally, there are 5 taste bud receptors. We isolated them. We know how they look like. They have the 5 senses, including the umami. What is not clear is what part of the brain is regulating our connection to the food and connection to the emotional desires. You see, when we eat a certain food, we're connecting a particular emotional aspect to that type of food. So when we have a recall, it is that emotional satisfaction we're recalling. Essentially, the food is a surrogate to bring that memory back, to be absolutely Freudian about it. So a whole host of things were introduced, right? We've got portion controls. We have a zillion diets. So I thought I will take you through the journey of diet from a history. Way back, again, Aristotle. Aristotle felt that if you eat food and then vomit, you will be okay. It's actually a Greek philosopher who recommended regular vomiting. Now, if you hear the story about anorexia mirabilis, that means a bliss. The Christianity in the beginning, some of the saints felt that when you go and starve, you will get an enlightenment. Its reality is ketosis. That little hallucination doesn't last very long. Then came in the breathe air, breatherism, where people said you can breathe air and lose weight and not eat a lot of calories. And then comes the William the Conqueror around 1000 AD, got fed up with his belly fat and decided, I'm going to go to bed and drink alcohol every single day. I will come out when I lost weight. Well, he did lose weight by just drinking alcohol as his food, and he did nothing except he had liver and other problems probably. The so-called vegetarian diet that we're talking about, or low-carb diet, they're not invented by Uma Thurman. These diets have existed many years ago, and they learned that cutting the carbohydrate is a sensible way. But in reality, it's not so much carbohydrate, it's the total calorie consumption. In an average diet, 2/3 of the calories are coming from carbohydrates anyway. So any diet where you control the carbohydrate, you are controlling the calories. Unless you purposefully go and replace it calorie per calorie, and that's what Atkins' diet did. Atkins' diet was very effective in lowering the total body weight, but the lipids were not well controlled, which is understandable. If you eat a lot of fat, and which is a dense calorie food, your calorie consumption increases. A gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. A gram of fat has 9 calories. Any diet, if you reduce the amount of saturated fat intake, you will lose weight, and that is given. So let's go one step further. Carbohydrates are not all made equal. The old world grains, where you have Ezekiel type, barley, millets, sorghum, spelt, most of them have significant amount of non-absorbable fiber. This fiber causes in the body a significant swelling, and in the stomach fills, so you will not be eating a lot of calories. That's the reason switching to quinoa, wild rice, or a brown rice is quite useful. So here we're making a conscious decision to eat this, not that strategy. Science tells us no matter what you do, the fundamental philosophy is reducing the total calorie intake. So the strategy number 1, eat this, not that, reduce the amount of saturated fat, go for polyunsaturated fats, whereas the other strategy, eat what you want in moderation, but reduce the portions. The third scientific data that is coming out is spreading the calories to 5 equal-sized small meals. You can go through a host of things. One day they tell you intermittent fasting is useful. just recently the data came out, it's not really that effective. Part of the reason is other times people make up. So ultimately, it's the total calorie management that matters. Calorie counting software, sure, you can try. It's not good for everyone because people get tired of it. There is the old principle where you take the meal and cut 20% and put it on the side and then eat only the 80%. The idea is to know what a small portion looks like. No meal should be, particularly the protein, should be bigger than a clenched fist. There are plates that are available. They draw the shapes in there where the carbohydrate, fruit, vegetable should go in, etc. What is terrific nowadays is a wide array of healthy food available. Even the delivery, HelloFresh and Thimble, there are a couple of places where they pre-measure the food and send it to you. All you have to do is to mix and put the ingredients. The biggest risk of DoorDash or Ubereats or Postmates is a large amount of food ordered and delivered, which is typically dense calories. And we have a tendency not to waste it, and we end up consuming more calories. Think about the COVID diet that everyone is talking about. On an average, 5 to 10 pound weight gain per patient I have seen in the past 2 years. So there is something to be said about the need to go to the farmer's market, buy the fresh ingredients, engage yourself in the cooking of the food. Definitely we will be more health conscious. And last advice, movement, mobility matters to a great degree. People would think that I am going to go to the gym and get my 6 packs. The abs are made in the kitchen. Calorie control starts in the kitchen, ends in the kitchen. Increasing the physical activity will make the diet much easier and a long way to go. There's plenty of evidence now showing that controlling the diet, salt, sugar, and starch, those are the 3 elements. If we control, you can reduce the incidence of diabetes, hypertension, and congestive heart failure, and to a large extent, the cholesterol. This is where you would argue, should I have avocados or eggs? Well, why not both? Inherently, they're not bad. Avocado has plenty of monounsaturated fatty acids. Eggs in a moderation provides you the healthy, soluble protein that body can readily use. So go for it and go with the avocado toast in moderation. Thank you. And I'd love to take any questions that you have, and I see a few here. There is a question about vegan foods. What do you think benefits are of the following a vegan diet? Now, I wouldn't go into the definition, vegan or vegetarian, or then you have ovo, lacto. Strict vegan diet is difficult to follow unless you were born and raised in a vegetarian environment. But the message here is plant-based diet has increasingly been recognized as a strong, useful element in the overall dieting. The plant-based diets typically involve lots of vegetables, significant amount of fiber, and antioxidants. You could say, I will take them in a capsule, by all means. The biggest challenge with a vegan diet is how good a quality of the protein one can consume. There are plenty of legumes, 6,000 varieties. They give you the protein. Soy gives you the protein. But if you're willing to add a dairy product, it will make it easier. But don't forget this. There are 1.4 billion Indians in the Indian subcontinent. Majority are vegans, vegetarians. And the incidence of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes is exploding. So vegetarian and vegan diet by itself is not a panacea. So the contrary, people with elevated cholesterol, they say, let's go vegan. Well, You can fry the vegetable in a tempura or a coconut oil or sunflower oil, palm oil. That's not very good. By the time the product is done, you will not know if it is really a vegetable or not. So you need to know when is a vegetable. So there is this raw movement, raw vegetables as opposed to cooked, processed food. In that sense, what about potato? Is that a vegetable or not? So there are, sprouts are good, lots of fiber, iron, calories, if you manage the calorie consumption. So the one advantage of a plant-based diet, whether it is absolute or predominantly plant-based diet, is the reduction in the incidence of cancer. Colon cancer and diabetes, hypertension, they have been shown repeatedly that by choosing a plant-based diet and avoiding the meats as much as possible have a significant beneficial effect. A recent study is showing that beef consumption is singularly related to inflammation in the body because of the chemical called TMAO. When the bacteria in the gut interact with the beef product, TMAO levels go up. When patients are taking antibiotics that change the bacterial flora, beef consumption did not elevate the TMAO. It is still in a very early experimental phase. I don't think we can make a solid recommendation one way or the other. Overall, it's good to have a lot of plant-based products, not necessarily absolute. Okay, the second question is interesting, and that is, what's the diet flavor these days? Okay, you went through Atkins diet for a while, Zone diet, South Beach diet, or Whole30, they're all effective. I could tell you there is no ineffective diet. The flavor of the diet now is going to keto. Fundamentally makes absolutely no sense in using keto diet. As a cardiologist, I recommend you do not use it. It gives you the rapid weight loss. It gives you that satiety because the ketone body is circulating in the body, makes you not hungry. But the yo-yo effect, keto diet is very hard to maintain. And when you have a rebound, that's when the lipids become very abnormal. And it is much better to go with a sensible, balanced diet. And that includes, if you want to have a slice of pizza, go knock yourself out, or a Snickers bar. It's the total calories, mindful of the saturated fat intake, no more than 10 grams, sugar, and the heavy salt intake. Those are the important things. And I've got two more questions here. What's your opinion on organic versus non-organic? Assuming the food is certified organic and real, it is clearly better. Doesn't have the pesticides or the preservatives. If you imagine a bread that is coming from a place, I wouldn't mention names, and it stays edible for 10 days, there is something wrong. How can a bread stay fresh for 10 days? There are preservatives put in. Most preservatives are safe. They've been tested. But it is not the same. You go to the baker, the freshly baked bread, and it is good for that day or maybe the next day. That's the kind of freshness. So organic, non-organic is a different argument from a farm-to-table fresh food. Many Americans who travel to Europe, Mediterranean area, know this a lot. The Mediterranean diet is the most popularly recommended diet for heart disease patients or prevention of heart disease. The Predimed diet results are very encouraging. The addition of olive oil plus the Mediterranean diet has a tremendous benefit. Most recently, they switched to using avocados in the diet. The addition of avocado produced tremendous health benefits, reduces the risk of a heart attack, stroke, and death. Now, is it because adding avocado, you're not using butter, margarine, or anything else? Or is it because avocado itself has inherently beneficial aspects? 100 grams of avocado product has 35 grams of fat. 23 grams are mono and polyunsaturated fats. It is very hard to find that amount in a plant. So earlier question about a vegan diet or a vegetarian, incorporating avocados have a tremendous health benefit. Organic food in general is fresher, healthier, but more expensive. So I would need to be balanced in that sense. Ultimately, you need to stretch the dollar. So is it that essential? Probably not. What are your thoughts on blending fruits and veggies? I'm assuming juicing, is that? Now, juicing is becoming popular. I have two concerns about juicing. Number one, the amount of sugar that gets in per day. Juicing typically involves a lot of, for example, the local health store I go, they have 4 apples squeezed and the chaff and the fiber removed, and you get that in the juice. Yes, you can add all other stuff, kale, blah, blah, blah. The problem is this: you have increased the amount of sugar, and number two, you don't have the same degree of insoluble fiber. By the very act of juicing and blending, you're eliminating that fiber. Fiber is essential. To me, that is the fundamental problem. There is something physiological about taking calories as a liquid. I'll give you an example. 35 years as a cardiologist. When my patients are not getting the solid food, they're getting TPN, that is the intravenous hyperalimentation, their calorie balance is positive, and yet they're hungry. The very act of chewing the food is what produces this satiety. That's the reason your mom told you, chew your food, eat slow. It's been shown if you are chewing, you eat less. If you're standing and eating as opposed to sitting down and eating, the amount of calories you consume is different. So the problem with the blending or juicing is lots of sugar, no fiber, and you have no chewing. So if you mix it in a healthy way with the rest of the other food, I think it's okay. I got 2 more questions and then we will stop. Can you please recommend a healthy bread? Should we assume all multigrain breads in moderation is good? That's a great question. I'm a huge fan of bread, and I have vacillated from one type of bread to the other. To me, ultimately, it turns out to be the size of the slice that matters, really, not what kind of bread. Having said that, the old world grains in the bread, prison bread or Dave's bread is hugely popular. There is hemp bread. You can buy them in Mother's Market. There is Ezekiel bread. I cannot get my children to eat any of these breads, I can tell you. They say they taste like the sole of a shoe, but they are very healthy. Healthy because, number one, you don't eat a lot. 2, you're forced to chew or you choke. All right, and it has a lot of insoluble fiber. Those 3 things are very beneficial. When we control the diet, one factor that is necessary is how do you fill your stomach, right? Many times they tell you, go to a restaurant, drink a glass of water before, eat vegetables. The insoluble fiber in the food does the same thing. You will eat less if you incorporate fiber. And the last question, should patients with familial hypercholesterolemia limit avocados or eliminate them? Do not. Familial hypercholesterolemia is a condition where the genetic upregulation in the body, it's a chromosome defect. One of these days they will locate it, they will use the CRISPR to snip it. But until then, it keeps on churning large quantities of cholesterol. The most I have seen, a patient is a child, cholesterol level was 1400, not 200, 300, which alarms most people now. It was 1400. The cholesterol was so much it precipitated on the valves, causing valve problems. That's how. The amount of cholesterol we consume every day is less than 5 to 10% of the total body cholesterol production. That's the reason, given moderation, if you assume that you're eating balanced calories, not excess calories, dietary cholesterol consumption does not impact serum cholesterol as opposed to what the body is making it. And that's the reason why avocados don't have cholesterol. Vegetables do not produce cholesterol, but excess intake of vegetables that have calories, the body converts them into triglycerides. Triglycerides, they have a remnant pathway. They come back to liver and they are converted to cholesterol. That's the reason a vegetarian in India can have very high cholesterol levels even though he does not eat animal products. So avocados are allowed. On that note, I want to stop and thank you all for listening in.